in the United States of America. I understand different countries have different percentages and stuff. And quite frankly, the stats are even really hard to unpack. But as somebody who I went to rehab and then I went to AA, and I have not had a drink yet since. I have not had a drink since I went to AA or rehab. So I'm in the extreme minority of the stubborn fucks who just like who somehow didn't drink no matter what, right? And I think there's this arrogance in people who maybe are in my category of that, who think that they did it right, they are superior, they figured it out, they were honest, they were humble, they were whatever bullshit they want to put in there, which really is heartbreaking. And it just shames the rest of us who really struggled to get sober. And if I'm really honest about what my journey was like, because in AA, this wasn't the narrative, but when I left and started deprogramming, what I was clear on what my actual story was, is I tried to quit drinking, or like moderate my drinking for 10 years without being able to. Like I just wasn't, the truth is I wasn't ready to stop. I thought about it. What if I don't drink for a month? What if I don't drink for a week? What if I don't drink for a while? But I never actually wanted to stop until the moment that I actually stopped. So for me, my own perspective, which is obviously not the universal perspective, but I think there's some truth in it. I didn't get sober until I was ready to stop. That was like, that's how I look at my own life. Like I could have done harm reduction like 10 years earlier. If I had done Sinclair method like 10 years earlier, my whole life would have gone on a different trajectory, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to especially have Tara Grace talk about this topic, because I know it's near and dear to her heart. And that's why I feel like this episode is so special. And then obviously this week, we've all heard about Rob Reiner, Nick Reiner. Nick is currently in jail, arrested under charges of murder. And what we know about Nick is that from 15 to 22, he's 32 now. So for those 7 years, he was in and out of 17 or maybe 18 treatment centers. I'm not sure if the first few were troubled teen centers, troubled teen cult, wilderness camp, those kind of things. I've heard some of you say that might be true, but I don't know. They do in his movie, Being Charlie, where it is about like roughly based on Nick, he did go to troubled teen. So for me, and then he says that it talks about the ineffectiveness of it and that there is no disease. My only disease is this treatment bullshit. And so to me, it's a really relevant topic right now, but also always, because anytime we can talk about something that's going to burn the fucking stigma, take the shame away, and be honest about what it's really like without dogma, without coercive control, I just think it's very liberating. So I'm going to shut up for a little while. I did bring some stats. I did look up a little things. So, but I think I really want to pass the mic over to our expert here today, Bernie.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, the first thing that whole Nick Reiner thing brought up for me when I heard about the 18 treatment centers, right, was the whole idea of, I have always felt like treatment and the program prevented me from getting to my root issues. Like once you have that label, once you start going to treatment, and once you're a majority of treatment that I've attended, and I believe it sounds like the treatment that he attended was that disease model 12-step based line of thinking. Once you're labeled that, every other thing that you have going on just gets swooped under that label, right? So maybe there was some, obviously I don't know him, I know nothing, this is just me guessing, right? But there's possibly all of those times he was going in and out of treatment, there was probably other things going on that got missed, that they just, oh, that's your disease, that's part of your disease, everything becomes part of your disease. And the amount of treatment, like I'm not blaming anyone on anything, but the amount of treatment, going to that much treatment before the age of like 19, there was a shit ton of them. I'm sorry, those like formative development years, getting told time after time that you're a piece of shit, all of that stuff, I don't think you leave that unscathed. Like I know I have treatment trauma. It's not just me being over dramatic about it. Like, there is real shit that happens to you when year after year you're told all of these things about yourself. I just, yeah, like for me, that's what that brought about, was just seeing, you know, again, I'm not blaming anything on anything, but once you go into these places for your substance use disorder, for your addiction, I feel like everything else gets ignored and that becomes your primary thing, when for I feel like a lot of us, that's really a secondary thing, right? Like, I feel like that's how we're dealing with the main issue that never gets looked at. It's crazy.
Yeah. I want to bring some good news to this conversation. So the stats vary depending upon where you look. And I've gone ahead, if you are on Sobriety Bestie YouTube, I put below the video that is streaming right now, I put about like 4 or 5 links to resources that I pulled this from. Not that, just in case anybody's curious what I was looking at. And if you know different stats that you feel have more weight behind them for some reason, maybe it's a meta-analysis or something like that, definitely feel free to drop it in the comments. Because I care way more about being accurate than being like anything else. Like, I care about the truth. I care about the truth more than my feelings. Like, I'm happy to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. So please correct me, is what I'm saying. Okay. So this is what I saw. I saw in the year 2000. And this is according to the National Survey of Substance Abuse Treatment Services that goes by NSSATS, NSATS, something like that. Okay, so in the year 2000, 90% of American addiction treatment programs were using a 12-step approach. So 25 years ago, 90% of the treatment centers in America were using a 12-step based approach. Minnesota model is how we know that, right? And then 7 years later, it went from 90 to 87.5. And now 2020, so 5 years ago, it's at 65.5. So 90, 87, and then 5 years ago, it was at 65.5%. So the percentage of treatment centers that are using 12-step, according to these data, is actually reducing. I mean, ideally, it would be reducing a lot faster, right? Because we know a lot more now. Well, because of brain science. Not because I left AA and I'm
Right.
Looking at it critically. It's because we know more now about the brain. So we should actually be doing more evidence-based or science-based or non-harmful treatment, right? Whether that's harm reduction, but AA actually, it's not only not harm reduction, it's like harmful.
Right.
And then hospital-based programs. So 65% of all treatment centers in the US in 2020, according to these data, use 12-step, but hospitals, 72% of them use 12-step. So AA really infiltrated the institutions, obviously, getting their disease model in, getting their 12 steps in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to see it going down, but I really do wonder, like I mentioned before we hit record, of the you said 65% are using it. So the people that aren't, I'm really interested in what their treatment is, right? Like, is it still very disease model based? Like, this is a progressive disease that you need to do XYZ. I would be so interested to find out what, but I'm glad to see that 12-step itself, because it's a spiritual faith-based program. So I'm glad to see that we're not using Pray About It for substance use disorder. That's really good.
I mean, can you name one other disease where like the medical institution's solution is pray about it?
No.
Have conscious contact with your creator or a doorknob. Either way, it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Donald. Hey, Nadine. How are you guys?
If Donald saying hello, we have Nadine saying, I can't stay long, but I wanted to come tell you to thank you. You both are amazing. These conversations are needed to happen. Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, I agree. That's why I love that you guys comment all the time, because it's the conversations need to happen. Like, we're over the authoritarians. We're over the one path works for everything. We're over even listening to one person. So I love it when everybody comments below. It makes it so much more rich. because y'all know a lot more than I do about a lot of these topics. And so please join the
Right.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. How many of you guys are you? A lot of you, like repeat customers in the swiveling door of rehab, or were you more like Kirsten and you went once and you got it? But I think even for me, for someone who went, I can't tell you exactly how many times. The same exact thing for you. You stopped when you were done, when it was over. I stopped when I was done and when it was over. It took me a hell of a lot of times because A, I wasn't ready in the beginning and I was just doing it for my family. But then B, when I really wanted it, I had already been so brainwashed to believe it had to look a certain way that when I wasn't doing it that certain way, whether it was myself or self-fulfilled prophecy, I always ended up using again. And then for me, I thought the path had to be detox, treatment, sober living. Like I thought there was a very strict path laid out in front of me. And I feel like a lot of us that do get stuck in that treatment loop, a lot of us think that's how it has to go because that's what we're told, right? Well, if you don't go to sober living, then you're not taking your sobriety seriously and, XYZ. And it's like, well, no, I really want this. I'm done. Like I'm truly done. But then it's the same old shit. Like I say all the time, whether it was the first time I got out of rehab or the 20th time I got out, I left with the same exact aftercare plan. Get a sponsor, work the steps, 90 and 90. That didn't change no matter how many times they knew I had been to treatment. It's just the insanity of it all. But in my opinion, they know it keeps people coming back, so it's a fantastic business plan for them.
How many times did you go to rehab?
I can't say like 100% for sure, but I'd say probably in the 20 to, if you count sober living, definitely 20 to 30 for sure. It's just because once I got out, I would go, whether my run was 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 months, it was like, okay, now you got to go back to detox, back to treatment. So sometimes I would only have a few days in between picking up, but like my family believed, and I was in my early 20s and still very ruled by my parents in some sort of way. Like if I was sober and like didn't have any money and didn't have any hustle and anything to do, like I was going to live the way that my parents wanted me to live. And the way that my parents wanted me to live was to go to treatment and be abstinent and be in recovery. There was no in between. It was either I was totally dependent on them and the treatment industry, or I was on my own and ripping and running. So.
Yeah. We have Vic saying, if it's a fatal progressive disease that no prescription or surgery can cure, doesn't that mean everybody would die? They're either going to die or do push-ups in a parking lot. Sorry, I know that's not an answer. I know there's so many, like when you apply logic to the ideology, it all just shatters. You have to be in that cognitive dissonance to make it make sense. Kate says, I'm curious to know how the whole process of wanting to stop using works in the US. So a person decides to stop. Who does she go to first? How does one get into rehab? Who pays for it, etc.? I can speak for myself briefly here. I had a moment where I knew that I felt like I was about to die. I looked into the mirror and I felt like my soul was about to leave my body and I was terrified. And so that was like, it was a huge moment for me. I'm like, if I don't stop drinking, I'm going to die. It was very clear to me. And then obviously I wasn't kind of ready to quit yet though. So I stopped looking in mirrors because I was terrifying to see that I was about to die. But it was a week later that I had a moment, because I was kind of like that last week of drinking, right? Where I was like, okay, I had this, that the prayer, the sentence, the words in my head were, I can't do this anymore. And I started instant messaging a friend on Facebook. I can't do this anymore. Then we ended up on the phone. I was super drunk and she called around to rehabs. She found 2. One was near me and half the price, but it was 12 step. And I was like, I'm not going to a fucking cult religion. The other one was a plane ride away and it was twice as expensive, but it was non-12 step. So I was like, fuck it. Like I want to go I don't want God. I don't want 12 steps. I don't want a cult. I don't want a religion. So if you have to pay more to not go to bullshit, then I guess that's what it is. Like, and I need something. I need help. So my dad paid for half of it. I paid for half of it. and I went down and did 30 days in Malibu of all fucking places. And in hindsight, I could see it actually wasn't non-12 step because we did have a recruiter come every week, and that was like the hook. So I kind of just realized that in the past 2 weeks that there was still indoctrinate. They still weaseled their way into a non-12 step rehab. And so this was 2009. There was, according to these data, only, a small percentage of the rehabs were non-12 step, but we still had a recruiter coming in doing his H&I recruitment, proselytizing, evangelizing for 12 step. And then we had an optional AA meeting we can go to once a week. So it wasn't, and I honestly don't remember. I should read my journal. I still have my journal from rehab. I don't know if they told me I had a fatal progressive disease or not. I don't remember when the AA ideology came in because I didn't know. All I know is they were drilling me to identify as an alcoholic, and I would not do it. I did not do that in rehab. When they ran around the circle and they said, you have to say, I'm Bob, I'm an alcoholic, all that shit. I said, I'm Kirsten, I have anxiety and I don't want to be an alcoholic. I don't want to become one. And everybody laughed at me, and I'm like, you go fuck your, there was humiliation, group shaming. I'm like, I'm not going to say what I'm not. Of course, when I got to AA, the pressure was much more intense. They were less forgiving than the rehab I was spending a shit ton of money to be at. They were more forgiving.
Yeah, for sure. So for the process of wanting, for me, there was a couple of different ways. It was also during a perfect storm of when insurance had just gotten to where you could be 25 on your parents' insurance, and then it was also in Massachusetts we had state health care before before Obamacare. And so it was a time where you would just call, and if you wanted to get into detox, because that was basically the first step, or that's what I thought the first step had to always be. And you'd call detox, and sometimes you'd have to call a couple days in a row. Sometimes you could call and get a bed that day. And then that was from detox. Then they, work with your insurance and get you into a place. But the first place that I went to, and I went to it 2 times in a row, was actually a cash place. They didn't take insurance, but my parents had no idea. They were just listening to the lady who said this is where she should go. Looking back at it, she probably got money for recommending me there, because it's just kind of odd that out of everywhere, that's where she recommended. But I have no proof of that, obviously. But yeah, I went there, and then that place indoctrinated my family into believing that I should never go home. I should always go to sober living, that to have me in the house was to kill me, and that I would always need further treatment and all this stuff. And my parents bought into it because they had no clue. And to top off, this place at the time had 0 clinical staff. It was 100% run by 12-steppers. There was not a person on there that was any sort of professional. They were just 12-steppers. And then parents, a lot of parents didn't even know that till later in it. They thought it was an official rehab. But yeah, that's how it started. And that's why it was so hardcore for me, because it was one of those places you work the steps rigorously and fast, so that when you were leaving that place, you were already making your amends. So I learned anything less than that fast, work the steps, get it done, so you can start working with people. Anything less than that was AA light, and you're going to kill, that's the type of, for people who don't really want it. So that's why I got so into the big book and all of that shit, because I was like, okay, if I don't do it like this, that's not the real program,
Yeah. Yeah, it's pushed so heavily. Blue Butterfly says, I went to rehab 3 times. Sarah says, I was 51-50, so I was really done when I lost my mind.
Yeah, I know people in Massachusetts, we call it getting sectioned. And, I saw a study actually that showed, I forget the exact percentage, but the amount of people that overdosed after being sectioned was fucking horrendous.
369 says, multiple times for me, not ashamed anymore. Good, yeah. Used to be, but now I see clearly, and actually had a counselor tell me they didn't understand the steps and just work there. At least she was honest with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you do carry a lot of shame, and then it almost becomes part of, I remember at one point having like so many tries became part of my testimony of like how I just kept coming back, and I would always find some reason of why it never worked, right? And it was always some reason that was my fault. It was never that the program, and it was just, it became part of my armor, kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like, it became part of
Yeah.
the club to be like, oh, like, we just keep coming back, and there's always something that, like I said, there was always just something that I didn't do. Even when I was making it up, I was like, I didn't know if that was true, but I had to come up with some reason of why I keep fucking getting a new 24-hour chip. I didn't understand that it was that this was a religion, not a program. Like, you think it's the way that you have to live your life once you get this label, and then once you adapt to that, once you think that this is how it has to be, it becomes so confusing when you are taking all of the suggestions and it's still such a struggle. And then everyone's like, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, then everybody would do it and all that. So like, you think it's supposed to be hard, and you think you're supposed to be drowning, and you just keep praying and turning it over. And when you're going to these institutions that tell you the same shit, of course you believe in it,
Yeah. The entire reality that's painted for you, you get popped into this ideology where all those things are true, that it
Yeah.
works if you work it, that if there's if you're successful, it's because of the system, the 12-step system. If you fail, it's because of you. And that's the piece that is so inherently harmful. And I mean, the way that I currently look at it is, and the reason why I never focus on talking about individuals inside AA, although there can be a lot of trauma that happens in there if we get into 13 step or even other things, I focus on the actual ideology itself is harmful, regardless of how and who it's done. I mean, that's even something that Nick Reiner was saying in the interview. I put it on one of my Facebook or YouTube videos recently last week. He was saying that they try to tell you, and I was so surprised he said this, because when I started watching Being Charlie, Nick and Rob Reiner's movie about addiction from 10 years ago, I thought it was going to be AA propaganda. And it started to be, and I was just like kind of squirming in my seat. I was trying to like, can I like white knuckle watching this movie? Am I going to barf? But then he said, they make you think that if you relapse, it's your fault, and they tell you you're going to relapse. So what do you do when you leave? You relapse, because that's what they say you're going to do, and then they say it's your fault, and then you go back, and then you become and then the counselor was like, you're a repeat offender, and he's like, you mean a repeat customer? And I'm like, ooh, okay, we have some people in Hollywood who are seeing it. We're seeing it here. And it's such a good point. It's like, how demoralizing is that to be told constantly that if a system that has a 90 to 95% failure rate, if you don't have success in that system, it's your fault. It's like, what? And then the few people who do are like, yeah, see, I did it. I was honest. I did my steps. I did what my sponsor said. I turned it over. Why don't you just turn it over? Like, no, bro.
It's so true though. Like, we have normalized that it doesn't work for most people, but we're okay with it because we've learned, well, it doesn't work for most people because most people don't want it bad enough, right? Like, we totally are accepting as a society that it doesn't, like, rehab treatment doesn't work for most people, but it's because we've labeled the quote unquote addict as this person who doesn't want to stop. So yeah, well, of course it doesn't work for most people because most people don't want it bad enough. That's the real, like, it's fucked up. Donald said they try to make it look like they, AA, are open to harm reduction and open-minded, but AA and harm reduction don't mix. I was in and out of 15 detoxes and dual diagnosis wards. It was the same shit over and over, and I went to AdCare 3 times. I went to AdCare once. Same shit at Edge Hill, Newport. They said if you don't get it by the 3rd time, I was doomed, and I was on my 4th. Yeah, it is. I agree with and I know people always say like we shouldn't put a divide between harm reduction and 12-step, but at their fundamental principles do not mesh. Like, AA believes if you put one thing in your body that you lose all control, And in harm reduction, we believe that you can decrease your use, that you can switch substances, that you can, change routes of administration. Like there are so many things that you can do. And in AA, it's like once you put one, you're this rabid animal that's like, must do more drugs, must drink, can't think for myself. It's all, and that's just, it's all about like crashing you down. And harm reduction is all about building you up and saying, you are in charge, bitch. Like you can do this. What do you want to do? What are your goals? And AA says, sit down, shut up. You have no idea what's good for you. And it's totally opposite.
Yeah. I'm going to read something from Alcoholics Anonymous, Cult or Cure.
I have that too.
Okay. The purpose of the quote treatment process is to indoctrinate the patient into the AA program and into the into the disease concept of alcoholism belief system. That is, the purpose of 12-step treatment is to convince the, obviously it's not actually treatment, right? I mean, maybe it's considered treatment in a rehab center, but 12-step meetings are not really treatment.
Right.
By definition, I mean. So that is the purpose of 12-step treatment, is to convince the patient that he has an incurable, quote, disease from which he will never recover, that he is, quote, powerless over alcohol consumption, and that he will inevitably lose control if he drinks, that he should return to drinking, he will inevitably drink in a progressively more destructive manner, that he is in, quote, denial, that he must not trust his own thoughts and perceptions. Ooh, there's the freaking harm. You can't trust your thoughts and your perceptions. Anybody who's trying to convince you that that's true, run. And that he must abandon self-direction, brutal, and turn his life over and will over to God or God's interpreter, AA, and that he must make a commitment to lifelong involvement in Alcoholics Anonymous, because the only alternative to such lifelong involvement is jails, institutions, or death. That is the purpose of 12-step treatment. It really has little to do with the problem of alcohol abuse. Rather, it is an indoctrination program designed to inculcate both distrust of self and learned helplessness in the patient, and to convince him that his only hope for salvation is to abandon self-direction and to plunge himself into lifelong participation in the religious program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Never mind that every single premise upon which this indoctrination program is built is demonstrably false.
That is fucking spot on. That is exactly what it is. That is so spot on. Yeah, like Donald said, the war on self.
Kate says, how long does rehab last? 30, 60, 90. It depends. It's different for different people. Mine was 30 days. They invited me to stay for another 30, but it was so freaking expensive. I was like, I am so scared to leave, but I can't afford to stay. Like, what the fuck? And my roommate there was so gross. Like, why can you please stop touching yourself and put clothes on? She was like always naked in the room and like would be masturbating. I was like, this is like not okay.
I didn't even deal with that in prison. Damn.
And then we watched that show Intervention, and I saw the person who had the room before me, my bed, and he was just like shitting over the whole thing. I was like, get me out of here, but I don't want to go. I'm so scared. Okay, that was TMI.
Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, I went to rehab anywhere between 2 weeks and 5 weeks. It just depended.
There's some programs are 9 months as well. They do some 9-month programs. I've heard that's pretty common. Cassandra says, hopefully with more awareness, more rehabs will drop the religious cult. Yeah.
I think it's too profitable for them to care. But that's just my jaded opinion. This person said, sober living, I believe pushes some back out there to use due to requirements and unrealistic expectations. 100%, dude. 100%. There's such unrealistic expectations in sober living. And then it's like you can get kicked out on the street for like a behavioral thing that's not even that serious, but they make it seem like, you got to follow these rules and they got to be to a T because your life depends on it, because you just got to be so, all of this like rigorous bullshit that is unrealistic. I fucking 100,000,000% agree. Do you want to read it?
Go ahead.
Sarah said, been to over 18 rehabs. The trauma I experienced in treatment programs were awful. I was forced to take medications I didn't want to take. At any time I didn't, they reported to my insurance to keep me there longer. Broke HIPAA and told my mom I was worse off than I was. I was stranded 6 hours away from home with no money or a way back home, and my family wouldn't pick me up because of what the rehab was telling her. 100%, dude. I ended up staying in treatment for 10 months and just caving into their, I believe that's why it says modality. I'm so sorry. And that is a lot of times what happens to people. They kind of get you away from your parents and then just like poison your parents with information, and anything that you say, they're like, oh, that's that manipulation they were telling me about, she's manipulating me. And it just becomes such a nasty thing. Was that the second part of her comment?
I might be, yeah.
Okay. I work in harm reduction now, and I constantly speak at events and advocate for others, and always bring up to rehabs that only implementing 12-step programs or not offering something like MARA or Smart Recovery or any other type of support group is unethical and goes against the pillars of medicine. Medicine has no place for religion or spirituality. Spot on. Absolutely.
Sarah says, same, I work in a hospital and we go off trauma informed. Awesome. We got Nelson with happy holidays. Happy holidays indeed. Yes. David says the entire industry is set up for people to fail and need more treatment. Yeah. Even crazy Nick knows how backward these cult centers are. Yeah. At a certain point, it's like, if you keep doing the same thing and it's not working, and then you leave and then you start to look into it, you get that it's not working. And the fact that society hasn't, by the time you get that it's not working, unless you're from like an incredibly wealthy family, which Nick obviously was, like, you're out of money, you're out of options. And yeah. Blue Butterfly says, I used to think rehab was to help me get abstinent. Now I believe it's a way to funnel people into the cult of AA.
Yeah. I mean, some of these treatment places that I went to, they would send people to these sober livings, and then you would like take over the AA meetings in the towns, right? Then people would move out because they wouldn't want to move back home because they wanted to start their new life where their new home group is. So then you literally do have rehabs that are like creating whole colonies of people that from the rehab that are in AA. Like there is 100% towns throughout the United States that are that way. It's fucking insane. Nadine said, AA created a helplessness in me I had never had before, pinned me against myself. Absolutely, dude.
100%. Same. Kate says, so essentially someone who has never heard of AA decides he needs help, calls a rehab, and has like an 80% chance of getting sucked into AA-NA. Kind of. So I had heard of AA before I called rehab and got help. And I thought it was a religious cult, and I wasn't interested in going. So I think a lot of us know what AA is. It's everywhere, from even like the shows I watched when I was in high school and stuff. Like it's embedded so deep into the culture that it's kind of synonymous with, if you ever have a problem with drinking, that you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But none of us, when we're little, think we're going to grow up and have a problem with drinking, right? We're not going to be the old man under the bridge with the paper bag kind of a thing. That was what was in my head as like a Gen Xer of what alcoholism looked like. So I knew about AA, but I knew I didn't want to go. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like you said, essentially it's possible someone could totally never hear, and they have a gigantic chance of becoming a fucking cult leader member in there. Like, it's insane. Donald said, right on sober living, you are supposed to have a disease, and if you exhibit symptoms, they throw your ass out on the street. Right. And every little thing about your personality is part of your disease. If you don't rinse your fork off in the sink, that is part of your disease because you're being selfish and disrespectful to the other people in the house. Like, every little tiny behavior that you have gets picked apart as part of your disease and your selfishness. Totally.
Yeah. Kate says, "Are there mental health professionals that evaluate the patients in rehab?" Yeah, so the owner or the founder of the rehab I went to was a medical like addiction doctor. And so he was like at the top. He had an office that wasn't in the house that we would get like they drove us to once or twice, whatever. There was therapists on staff that were at that like during Monday through Friday during like workday hours. Then there was they called them techs or technicians, which are essentially like, I don't know, they might have had a certification, but really their qualification was that they were in 12 steps. So like the lady who was like running the house I was at, she was 5 years sober in AA. So she's talking about AA. She's talking to me from AA language. I'm literally having an epiphany right now how fucked up that is. I'm like, wait a minute. She probably did tell me I had a disease because she was an AA true believer working at working at a non 12 step rehab. Talk about like infiltration. Yeah. Wow. Like I'm literally just like realizing that right now, how fucked up that is. Like get some non 12 step people working at the non 12 step rehab. Don't have the cult. Like, but we're so vulnerable when we're there. And, you know, I got traumatized in my rehab and they just kind of, it just happens to a lot of us. Maybe you guys, I've shared the story once before. But very briefly, I got SA'd by a staff member at rehab, and I told my therapist within an hour of it happening. I went outside, had a panic attack, and cried. My friends at the rehab were like, "You need to go tell your therapist." I told her, she didn't believe me. I was like livid, so angry, at like just pissed. Also coming off benzos, I was so not okay at the time. And to not be believed by my therapist was really difficult. And then a week later, because there was two of us, we had two rehab houses. A week later, that same staff member did it to another member of the other house. And then she was believed because she was the second person in a week to fucking say it happened. And she sued. And, you know, I mean, I just feel like, and I share that because I know that that's a lot of our stories. A lot of us have things that happen to us when we're in treatment that are really not fucking okay. And that we don't even have I don't know if it's like stability of nervous system, clarity of mind, confidence, whatever. We're literally so vulnerable and then we're not heard. And I just feel like so many of us get harmed in the treatment is harmful. And I just have so much heart for it because it's a lot of us and it's in different ways, right? What it is. But I would even say that being indoctrinated into AA is up there and maybe even more harmful because I mean, I got over that trauma that happened to me in rehab, like kind of quickly. I kind of wrote my therapist off and was kind of just like, fuck you. You know, I was kind of mad about it, right? But the harm that AA did to me, I am still unpacking. And it's only almost been, I left AA in 2020. So like Bernie, when you said that the effects of AA were more negative on you than heroin, I'm like, yeah, even the SA that I got in rehab by a staff member was not as harmful for me as AA ideology is. Like, it's a lot to unpack.
It is, and I think it's like Nadine said, because it's a literal war on yourself. You know, and it's funny because they always talk about, you know, the disease of addiction is a war on your own mind, but really the disease of being indoctrinated by all that bullshit is the real war. That, I mean, or at least for me, you know, was that was the real war that was going on in my mind, right? Like to not even be able to trust yourself, dude. To learn that you can't trust yourself. What other, I mean, what is that?
And that's what the Nick Reiner character, Charlie, and being Charlie says, the disease is the treatment.
Yeah. It really is. It really, really is. Yeah. Nadine said the treatment industry indoctrinated the family too. Yeah, it absolutely, I know it got my parents, especially my mom. But when it's not working, AA blames us, our thinking, and our disease 100%. And that's what makes it, that's how it's still so rampant, is because it's so easy, even in your situation where different harms have happened to people. It's so rampant because once you get the label of the addict or the alcoholic, well, we can't trust what you say. You're unbelievable. You're everything about that. It's so easy to do fucked up things to to vulnerable people at that stage because nobody believes you, because they just think that you're just a liar, right? Like that
Yeah.
is one characteristic that they hand us, is that we are a liar and we can't be trusted, and anything that we say is making trouble, this, that, or the other thing. Like the whole thing is just really gross.
Yeah. I said to my therapist, I was like, and I was crying too. I was like, "Are you saying you don't believe me?" And she's saying, I've worked with him for 5 years and I know he wouldn't do that." And I was like, "Okay, well," whatever the fuck. But 100% I'm never going to be in a room alone with him, and this is on you. You are allowing this to happen. And I will never be in a room alone with him again. Period.
Yeah. And that's how so many of these predators, oh, well, they've been in these rooms for, 7 years and have helped
Mhm.
so many people get sober, and they've done so much for our community. I mean, that's all you have to do is get a little bit of time under your belt, sponsor a few people, and you get away with so much shit if you want to, because of the way that AA values time. It's
Yeah,
insane.
100%. Let's see. Matthew says, I had to lie to hospital and say I was suicidal just to get admitted so I can get in a rehab and not get kicked out of my sober living."
Yeah, it's so many times. It's like, especially when you have just been in treatment and then like you get kicked out, and like all of these things that you have to do to just try to A, appease your sober living, or B, not sleep out on the street that night because you were just kicked out. It's like, it's just a vicious cycle that just keeps you going in and out, in and out. I'm sorry you went through that, because it sucks. I've been there.
Dolly says, "Any suggestions for deprogramming? I have been in recovery for 9 years and I want to break out. All of my friends are 12 steppers though." This is so relatable. Yeah. It, I will say, I see that you're watching on Facebook. Um, if you go to Sobriety Bestie YouTube, I have a lot of playlists for deprogramming from AA. It's similar for NA and 12 step in general. I think a great playlist, if you wanted to go to Sobriety Bestie YouTube to start with, is 8 ways AA is controlling your mind. And we go through Robert J. Lifton's 8 criteria for thought reform. I feel like that's a really good way to start off a deprogramming journey. There's also a playlist called AA as a Cult, and there's 4-part series there. And it, for me, seeing and doing that with everybody in the videos, it really helped me understand that AA is a cult. It was also important for me to understand AA is a religion, because then I can look at religious deconstruction process and use that as a guideline for healing, and also use cult recovery processes and read cult recovery books and read religious deconstruction books to understand what a journey out can be like. Now, everybody has different levels. You were in there 9 years. I was in AA 10 and a half years. I was a true believer. I thought it was all true. I thought the book was truth. I literally cried on Bill Wilson's grave, thanking him for my life and for channeling the book from God. I was in deep. I was bananas. And yeah, so I think that some of us have more indoctrination to get out of our head and more thought reform. And there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I've created videos on YouTube basically for what I wish I had when I was going through it. And as I'm still deprogramming, I'm sharing what I learn in the form of educational videos and stuff. There's other resources too. Anybody wants to share any other resources? There's lots of outside literature, lots of good books to read.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say Unbroken Brain, Coming to Harm Reduction, Kicking and Screaming, Undoing Drugs. Like there were several books that were just opened up my mind to be like, US of AA actually was a really good one for me to see the truth about AA history and really understand that, I'm not insane.
Nelson, is there a secular form of the Serenity Prayer?
I have no idea.
Grant me the serenity, accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. Instead of saying God, I'm just wondering if you thought of it as higher self, as if you were talking to a part of yourself that is wiser, and if that is how you see spirituality or yourself. I think it really depends upon your worldview, how that would work. Because for me, I feel like I kind of vibe with the idea of higher self and lower self. Like when I'm being an asshole, that's not my higher self. When someone's being an asshole to me and I'm returning kindness, that's my higher self. Like, I also think of it, I also vibe with the metaphor of inner children. There's different parts of me, and the different parts of me might have different needs and might be leading at different times. So it depends upon what construct you have in what makes sense to you, I guess. But if I was going to say like higher self, like grant me the serenity. Yeah, I don't know if if that's something that I would do, but there's ways that you can play with it. I feel like part of reclaiming spirituality after leaving AA and deconstructing from the coercive religious part of it, right, is what rituals do I want to keep? Do I still want to use some of the rituals even though they don't totally align with me? Like, do I still want to pray even though I don't believe in a higher power anymore, if that's the case? Or and 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 then to choose what rituals or practices that you want to do and reclaim it and reclaim things and own them and make them yours and make them mean what you want them to mean or yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that all made sense, but I feel like that's a huge part of the deprogramming journey is like, what do I think about spirituality when it's
Yeah.
not coerced? What do I think about a higher power when it's not, what's not, my survival isn't linked to it? Let's see. Kate says, I mean a psychiatrist. Are there any psychiatrists that diagnose for mental illness and prescribe medications? Okay, yeah, the medical doctor at my rehab was a psychiatrist, and he's the one who got me off benzos rapidly, which now I realize is not usually how you get off benzos. I also pushed for it. I was really angry. I was like, I'm paying all this money and you're going to have me leave. They told me to buy a scale so I can titrate down over a year and a half. I'm like, that sounds like a drug dealer. Like, I'm paying to come to rehab. I didn't understand any of it, and they didn't explain it to me. They didn't tell me about, is it the Ashton manual? Like, I didn't know any information about benzos. I didn't know it was going to be brutal to be ripped off them. And I mean, they did put me on 2 other meds. So I got prescribed Neurontin and Trazodone for the first 15 months of my sobriety to help my brain. What they said was to help my brain come to homeostasis after having been on Klonopin twice a day, morning and night, for 2.5 years. So he was a psychiatrist, the medical doctor at my rehab facility.
Yeah, I've been to rehabs that have literally had zero, like no doctors, no, not even a nurse, literally just 12 steppers. And the only thing that you could take would be like vitamins and what the heck is it? Melatonin. Like they wouldn't let you be on any meds or anything, but because it was a 12-step based place, it worked, right? Because it's like the whole no mind mood altering thing. So it really depends on the facility to what type of people are there. Curls. I have a question. What's a suggestion for rehab? Because I have a family member that we're trying to get into rehab for alcohol. They are in bad shape, and I feel lost trying to figure a good place. Oh, well, there's a couple things here. One is that it's maybe rehab. It just honestly, everyone's different, right? And maybe they may benefit from something like, working with a doctor and the Sinclair method. It's really hard for me when it comes to recommending rehabs because obviously I don't know. Every place is so different. So I would just really try maybe working with a local, see if anyone like Google your county and see a harm reduction organization that maybe can recommend some places that they know that are reputable. I have such a bad vibe with rehabs. I'm not the best person to ask, but you may want to look into, like I said, the Sinclair method. It's just, I don't know what their goals are and what they want to do. If you want to talk to them about it, but I don't know. What do you think, Kristen?
That sounds like really good advice, to look who's leading harm reduction in your area and ask them for recommendations. I think that's solid advice. I can't think of a better thing to say than that.
Yeah, 'cause I just don't trust, like, if you Google
Yeah.
rehab near you, I just don't trust it, unfortunately.
Let's take a little journey now back into cult or Alcoholics Anonymous, cult or cure. And so I want to read a part here. It is on page 111 on growth of the treatment industry. So I thought that was interesting. Like, what's the origin story of treatment industry in general, right? It's difficult to pinpoint the date of origin of the 12-step treatment industry. One might make a good case that it began with, quote, hospital work, while it was still part of the Oxford Group in Akron in 1935. So that would be Bill Wilson asking Dr. Silkworth if he can go through the town's hospital and indoctrinate them into the Oxford Group under the guise of it's going to solve their alcohol problem, because Bill had a white light experience where God was the wind through his body on belladonna, strychnine, morphine, and all the things. One could also make a case that it began with the establishment of the first AA group in a mental institution in Rockland State Hospital in New York in 1939, or with the establishment of the first AA, quote, rest farm in 1940. But perhaps the best case could be made that it began with the institution of formal AA indoctrination using the Big Book by Dr. Bob Smith at St. Thomas Hospital in Akron, Ohio in August 1939. Before his death, Dr. Smith treated, that's in quotes, treated over 5,000 people at that hospital. In all likelihood, this early hospital treatment was little different from Dr. Bob's early, quote, hospital work. Here's the treatment. Isolate the patient in a private room. Restrict his visitors to AA or Oxford Group members. Restrict his reading matter to the Bible, what they did in the Oxford Group, or after 1939 to the Big Book. Introduce surrender and thoroughly indoctrinate him into AA belief system. The 1980 conference approved AA book, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I haven't read that. I don't know if I will. That might be a yet. I might read it, but I don't know. It contains a description of the experience of Bill D., the first person ever subjected to hospital work. Okay, here's where this book is wrong. Bill D. was not the first person ever submitted to the hospital work. He's the first person that it worked on. He's the first person that got some sobriety time up. In this book, The Writing of the Big Book, who this is like an AA true believer wrote this. He's saying actually they worked with many people. It's just that Bill is the third part. They call it AA number 3. He's the first one it stuck for. So they kind of ignore that from the history. They ignore the failures. Okay. Let's see. There was identification with them. Okay, so here it is. There was the identification with them, with Bill and Dr. Bob, followed by a surrendering of his will to God and a making of moral inventory. Then he was told about the first drink, the 24-hour program, the fact that alcoholism was an incurable disease, all basics of the program that have not changed to this day. One thing that hasn't changed to this day is the emphasis on coercive treatment.
Sure hasn't. Coercive treatment is deadly. And Trent said, Marty opened the door to haterism. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Opening the door to earning a living, profiting as a Bill Wilson book club covert enterprise. You talking about Marty Mann? Kate said, Tara, in your opinion on the purpose of rehab, what is your ideal rehab? Ooh, well, personally, I think rehab is what I think of it now compared to what I think of it before. I would think the purpose would be to set the person up, but for success. But I really feel like rehab nowadays is to take your money. In my kind of deprogramming journey, I have come to a point where I really feel like majority of people wouldn't benefit from going to treatment. This is just my personal opinion because of what it makes you think about your substance use disorder, your addiction, as many refer to it. I feel like it makes up this whole fairy tale about it and how we view it in our society. And then we come out believing that we have this thing, like this monkey on our back that is never going to go away, and we have to, you know, always do XYZ and be watching out for it. And so I feel like rehab kind of plants the seed of that, and then that makes you more susceptible to coming back in, right? Not to say that there's not effective treatment out there, there's different pathways and all such, but I even feel like a lot of alternate pathways still make people believe that they have this lifelong disease that they're going to have to live with. And I feel like majority of us have something else going on. We deal with that, and then suddenly using drugs chaotically just doesn't seem like a good idea anymore. And I feel like rehab, 12-step, even alternate pathways are sometimes like a buffer in between you getting to where you really need to go to truly heal and be okay and not be susceptible to getting sucked back into using drugs chaotically. Obviously, that's my personal interpretation of it. And that has changed. I didn't always believe that. You know, it's just the more that I've learned about substance use disorder and the more I've learned about harm reduction, the more it just the traditional way that we treat it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think it's backwards. I totally agree. I wish I would have done Sinclair method, smart recovery, and therapy. And then I would have saved the money on rehab. I would have not gotten indoctrinated into a cult. And I would have seen that that would have worked. But instead, AA convinced me that AA had been the last house on the block, but it was really the first. But they told me it was the last. So when everybody tells you up is down and down is up, you get fucking dizzy. And then you're like, fine, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see some here. I'm not exactly sure. Here, Transverse says, as I encountered Bestie's sobriety channel, I was skeptical, thinking she was akin to Recovery House. Sync Marty Man. I hope that everybody is skeptical. That is my hope for everybody. Oh, and then we had the Marty Man comment that we read. And then we have, this viewer was wrong. Kirsten is sincere. I honestly, I feel like that's the way to go, is to be skeptical, like first, like to be discernment is the word that I would use. And that's how I am with anybody that I don't like the word follow, but anybody, I subscribe to people on YouTube. I love YouTube. I'm always on YouTube. YouTube's like my favorite platform. I'm watching all the things all the time. And I'm cautious. And sometimes I'll dip into somebody and dip out and whatever. And I think discernment is the way to go, especially if we're healing that self-trust piece that a lot of us had disabled through AA ideology, where you're not supposed to trust your thinking, outsource your agency, all of that. So I think discernment is a really good way to go. And yeah, and trust when you feel that somebody is right for you. Then I like this next comment. TSM is what worked for TSM works. It did for me. This is what I can't say what would have happened. Maybe I would have drank again. I mean, well, obviously I would have drank again if I did Sinclair method. That's the fucking point. But I mean, maybe I would have, like, maybe it wouldn't have worked for me. I don't believe that it wouldn't have worked for me, because I have a family member who took, I've told this story before, did naltrexone for weight issues per their doctor, and then they're drinking cut in half immediately without them even really noticing or being aware. They noticed they were buying less alcohol, but like they only had to buy it every other week instead of every week, but they didn't know why. So I think that genetically and everything, I think that it would have worked for me. And I just think it would have been it's the easier, softer way. It's the pill that Bill imagined when he wrote the big book that didn't yet exist. Science may one day, but they haven't yet. Well, they have. It's called naltrexone. It only works for 78% of the people, I think. Some of that might actually be compliance. So I talked to like a naltrexone expert recently, and you'll see that podcast coming soon on my channel. And they said that they're not sure why Dr. Sinclair said that 22% of the people it doesn't work for, but they imagine that maybe it was about, maybe they didn't take the pill. Maybe they didn't want to have the alcohol blunted because they liked the way it felt better without blunting some of the endorphin being plugged in. Are you holding something? Is that raising your hand?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm just sorry. I just fidget around a lot. Sorry.
Oh, good. I was like, wait, am I missing a sign? Is there a sign?
Like literally when you're betting on something or an auction.
Totally. I was like, something happening.
It's funny. Oh goodness.
Sobriety Bestie does have a list of recommended book. Yeah, I have. It's if you're watching on Sobriety Bestie YouTube, which Gail, I can see you're on Facebook, but if you're on Sobriety Bestie YouTube, below this video, you're going to see a link for books. It's basically sobrietybestie.com/books, links over to Amazon, and it has my recommended books for deprogramming AA, cult recovery, and critical thinking. I'm going to be adding to that over time as well. And if there's anything in that's not on there that you think should be, let me know. I like to make resources for us. I don't know where to go with these. Here, I'll toss one to you.
Rehab is an elongated detox. The real work is within to become self-empowered. Yeah, and unfortunately, I feel like rehab does the opposite of that, right? I mean, obviously it depends where you go, but for me and my treatment experience, it was just basically a 24-hour AA meeting, really. I mean, that is what rehab was for me in pretty much every single one. You know, it was just a place to go and learn all the things about the 12-step way, you know, and then maybe you get like one CBT worksheet so that they can say that they offer something else. You know what I mean? But basically that's all it is. JD said, are there any options for people who can't stop drinking besides these cult institutions? Yeah, I mean, there's a shit ton. It's like we just don't even know them all. Like we were just talking about the Sinclair method. There is a ton of different, and I guess, I mean, are some of them quote unquote cults as well, possibly, right? But there are so many alternatives to 12-step that you can't even name them all, but you don't even realize that they exist until you start looking for them. You know, I made a list of 12-step alternatives and never even finished it because there's so many. But I mean, there really is a lot. And you can, sometimes I think the best way is to just Google it, but it depends what your goals are, right? Is your goal to completely be abstinent? Is your goal to maybe, you know, just reduce your drinking? I think that's kind of the first thing that you got to look at is like, what do I want to do? If I feel that my drinking is problematic, what's the road I want to go? And then from there, literally your path and what you can do, it's endless. Like, don't let all of the bullshit that comes with like recovery and being an addict, like there's infinite possibilities of how you can live your life after chaotic use. So oh, what did I just hit? Okay, here we go. Bubba Pug. He was talking back to JD, said, depends on the financial situation. No money, AA can work. Talking to friends, family can work. Want to blow 20,000 in a rehab, that could work as well. Or another method, hobbies, etc. Exactly. Like for some people, they start going to the gym and working out and eating. Like there's literally so many different ways. I think it just, you got to look at your goals and what you want to do. And from there, you can fucking do anything.
Yeah, it's so individual too. And somebody sent me this thing about Rob Reiner talking about what he thinks about AA yesterday that I watched last night. And I thought it was really interesting. And I really agree with how he thought about Alcoholics Anonymous. And unfortunately, I didn't know any of his thoughts on it until after the tragedy, right?
Right.
And but the reason why we drink is different. It's individual. And essentially, when I think about why we drink, it's because we think it makes us feel better. We want it to make us feel better. It makes us feel better. Something just as basic as that. We want to feel better. We want to feel good. And we think that doing that will make us feel good on some level. So whether that's being dysregulated, whether that's having like unresolved trauma, whether that's being neurodivergent, whether that's having a mental health issue, whether it's just having a bad day, whatever it is, but we have different reasons and different things underneath. So that's why I know for me, I would choose Sinclair for harm reduction of the actual alcohol to make my brain less interested in alcohol over time. I would choose the therapy because now I know what I had in 2009 when I was getting sober is a lot of unresolved trauma that I would need to work through. And then I would choose Smart because now I can see that I also didn't have coping skills for how to meet life directly without numbing out and anesthetizing my feelings. Plus, our feelings are going to grow back in a way over the first 5 years as our interoception, our ability to feel what's happening in our side of our body, starts to grow back. It's like we get our feelings back. It's no the damage alcohol did to our brain is starting to recover. So we're feeling things more. And a lot of us are hypersensitive. And that's part of the reason why drinking was so good for those of us who did choose alcohol. And so that sensitivity can come back. And so I would want to learn how to manage my coping skills, science-backed coping skills, and Smart Recovery teaches that and offers community. But other people are going to be finding their way into harm reduction or sobriety because of different things were going on. And so I think for a lot of us, having proper assessments is helpful so we understand what we're working with. I didn't get assessed as autistic until 1 year after leaving AA. And I didn't get assessed as ADHD until 4 years after leaving AA. So had I known that, like literally my first year sober in 2009, so I got assessed as ADHD in 2024, a year ago. In 2009, when I got sober, I told my sponsor, I think I'm ADHD. I think I'm ADHD. And I was having all the symptoms and they were so exacerbated by everything else that was happening in my early sobriety dysregulation, like clusterfuck of trying to figure out how to focus and whatever. And my sponsor said, no, everything is alcoholism and your only solution is the 12 steps. So to me, that's not what the big book says, but that's what a lot of us are told, that everything that we're feeling is essentially this untreated alcoholism, but really we're coming in with different things. Now, yeah, whether it's some sort of trauma or maybe some sort of violent tendencies or whatever it is, we all have slightly different situations. So there is no one size fits all.
Yeah. It's funny though, but because when you go to rehab, everyone is told they have this one thing and this one thing is our problem. And the whole time that you're in there, you're working on your addiction, and it's all about those things. And like we talk about, I think I bought so into it because it was like finally an explanation of why I'm so fucked up. It was like everything that they described. I was like, okay, like that makes sense because I'm this, that, or the other thing. It was like finally a solution, even though I had been diagnosed with ADHD in 7th grade, but it didn't, I don't know. I guess no one really explained it to me. I'm not sure. Like having the diagnosis, it didn't really do anything for me. I still ruined my life. So, but it's one of those things that when you get that label and everybody is all of the same and we're all just like this one identity, and then you're told if you think that you're any different then you're terminally unique, right? Like
Denial.
you're into all of the things. Like it's really honestly it's insane. It prevents us from really getting to our root issues and really getting to the actual healing process.
Because you're just a garden variety drunk.
It's bullshit. It is bullshit. Dolly said, what's interesting is many 12-steppers even believe that it's bad to take antidepressants or other medications. I've seen people living with bipolar disorder encouraged to stop taking their medication because God will fix everything if you work your program. Needing anything outside of God is seen as a failure. Absolutely. And I belong to those type of groups. I belong to groups that you wouldn't have beer battered fish out of, why take the chance that it could trigger your allergy? Like it's the madness of it all. I know some people will say that's an outside issue, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's how your group operates, but there is a shit ton of groups that operate in the way of like, just don't take the chance because anything could trigger your allergy. And it becomes insane. It literally becomes insane. And it harms people off of their medications or prevents people from getting on the medications that they need. And I know, unfortunately, all of us have seen people who have taken their own life because of things related to that. So it's just disgusting. Disgusting. I can't take it. Yeah. Cough syrup is frowned on in sober living houses. Yeah, any cold medicine. I remember it was like a big deal. Like if you were sick, you kind of just had to go through it because they didn't want anything to trigger your allergy or to trigger. They were always afraid of the cups, the UA cups. They didn't want anything to trigger, have a false positive for the UA. I remember that's what they told me at least. That's why they didn't want us taking anything.
I stopped using mouthwash with alcohol in it when I was in early sobriety because when I would use it, it would make me feel like the way my mouth was watering, like I was taking a shot of like liquor, and it felt triggering for me. But the whole you can't have like wine in your cooked pasta sauce or whatever, like what are your or kombucha or the kombucha one, like I accidentally got buzzed off of it wasn't kombucha, it was coconut kefir. It was fermented. It was like this big one in Bali at this local place that were making it. And there was no quality control. And I had half of one and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I want to like go dance by the pool and like put the music on. I was like, I want to rave. Like what's going on? I was like, wait, am I drunk? I was like, is my organic drink alcohol? I was like, whoa. And then I kind of stared at the bottle for a little while and I was like, do I dump it or do I finish it? I dumped it, but I was like, and then I went to the meeting the next day and I called it my free lapse. Oh, that's a free lapse because it doesn't count because I didn't know, but I got fucking buzzed. But there was no allergy. There was no like.
But some people, they'll get like accidentally served. They'll order a non-alcoholic drink and get served and like it really messes with them. Like they are really, and it's sad because they're so bought into the idea that this could set off the allergy. They take one sip and they're like, they're okay, but you see them really messed up about it. It's sad.
Let's see.
Dolly said, yes, it took me years to get on medication for my depression. It got so bad I couldn't even get out of bed. I finally realized, what is the point of all this if I am miserable? Exactly. What's sad is I don't feel safe to even tell my friends about getting medicated due to fear of being shamed. I know it sucks, but I'm glad that you did what you need to do for you because you're exactly right. What is the point of all of this if you're miserable? Why make yourself miserable? Life is hard enough. Do what you got to do because at the end of the day, these people are not with you every single moment of your day. You are with you every single moment of your day, and you got to do what works for you. And honestly, the more that you go along this journey, you're going to find out that everything they believe is full of shit anyway. So you'll be fine. It'll be good.
Kate says, I was told not to put vinegar in my salad. I'm Italian.
Oh my goodness. That's a new, I didn't hear of the vinegar one.
It's funny because they're like, people are like, AA is not a religion. Religions like have like a devil or something. And I'm like, yeah, alcohol is the devil.
Right.
Like you can't even have vinegar on your salad. It's like fear it.
Oh man, that's too funny. Yes, I love US of AA. They said their comment was, I also been reading US of AA, and I do. I love that book. It really was a game changer for me. I love it. Andrea said, oh, sorry, apple cider vinegar is actually healthy for the gut. Good. This comment says, anyhow, thank you for the work you do. I'm about to take the detox client to a 12-step meeting at 2. It really, really sucks, but it's part of the deal. And it is part of the deal. And that was, the point of this conversation, right? Was how much it is part of the deal. When you go to treatment, you are, for the most part, going to be, it's a level of exposure of how exposed you are, but in some shape or form, you're going to be exposed to 12 step, and some of us get really exposed to it and really hooked into it, and then it changes the course of our life for however long that we're in it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw this video on YouTube. It was like a clip, like a 5 or 10 minute clip or something last night. And it was from a addiction psychologist at a like Ivy League university in America. And so prestigious university basically. And she was saying about AA that she thinks it's great, that it's, supportive, this, that, this, that. And the guy who introduced her is a doctor, and not a doctor of addiction, but a pretty famous doctor, and said, and not Dr. Drew. um, that we can have. I noticed we started talking about Dr. Drew at the beginning of the comments. We can circle back to him if you want. That's a fucking. There's some stuff to unpack there, but it was a doctor essentially and a addiction psychiatrist, and she was saying all this great stuff about AA, and she completely missed the point. She's like, a lot of the great benefits is that it's free and that you can get a sponsor and you could call the sponsor anytime, even in the middle of the night. For me, example, if you try to call me and it's a Saturday, you wouldn't get me until Monday when I'm back at work, and we might not even get back to you till Tuesday. And she's saying all this as a benefit. I'm like, you are literally evangelizing for the exploitation of free labor inside 12 step. Do you, Bueller, can you hear what you're saying? But they can't hear what they're saying because they're saying it's a benefit that you call this person in the middle of the night and their answer. Is it a benefit to be the person who's being called in the middle of the night and having to answer because you have to go to any length so that you can live? So we're getting exploited in AA, and it's being advertised as a benefit, and people are like, it's free. It's free labor. It's free because they're not paying the people who work there, which is you. It's me. It's free labor exploitation. And then she said at one line, she said in there, she's like, yeah, and this was from a year ago. She's like, yeah, and there's a growing community of AA bashers, but I don't understand what their point is. And then she continues, and I'm like, or a growing movement of people bashing AA, but I don't know what their point is. And I was just like, bro, you're one of the top you're an addiction psychiatrist, and you didn't look into, you're promoting AA, but you didn't look into what the people who are speaking out about AA are talking about, the treatment that you're putting people to. That's like saying anybody who's injured by the treatment that I'm promoting, I'm going to call them a basher, and I'm not going to actually listen to what they're saying, unpack it, and understand it. It seemed incredibly irresponsible to me, but it's not her fault, right? We know it's not her fault. That's the global indoctrination, is that the people who are these so-called experts are indoctrinated but don't know it. So they preach that it's free and that's a good thing without realizing why it's free. And then they preach that, oh, people are bashing it, but I don't get it, without listening to the so-called bashers. And could you imagine if there was any treatment in society? Let's say there was a cancer treatment, and some of the patients who leave it are talking about some of the adverse experiences they have. If those people get branded as bashers and never listened to, and you're just still recommending the treatment, you have to look at the people who are having adverse experiences to understand the treatment. You don't ignore them. That's right. Like, well, anybody who's injured by the treatment, we'll just like call them a basher and move them away. It's like,
it just goes to show you how they're so conditioned to not see the negatives. Like they are so conditioned to just see the positives that the negatives don't even compute. Like she said she didn't get the point. Like I promise you that all of us have made our point in more than one time. And it's just people don't see it, or they see these points as like, well, yeah, but they just see the benefits that outweigh any sort of negative that they don't even like. They can't even hear it. They can't. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I read her book too. I really liked her book. A couple of years ago, I read her book. So I actually have respect for this person. But when she was saying there's a growing movement of people bashing AA and I don't understand why, I was like, shouldn't you look? You're a scientist. Like, you should look. If there's, like, my training is statistics, right? If there's an outlier, if something looks weird, you dive in and find out the story. What the fuck are the data telling me? Because you want to do something, you want to understand what the data are showing you. So you don't ignore the people who have adverse experiences. You become curious. What are the adverse experiences? What are they talking about? Can I see what they're saying? But it's like what Bob's saying here. The blind leading the blind, or worse, sexual predators leading the blind, the arrogant and stupid leading the absolutely emotionally devastated. Yeah. And so I think one of the big challenges with repeat rehab customers and just 12-step in general is that people are unaware of the harms inherent in the ideology beyond, completely separate from the individual's 13th step, all of that the ideology itself is harmful. And I don't think most so-called addiction experts really appreciate that. I know we had some comments about Dr. Drew in the beginning. I don't remember what they were. They're like way up there, but he's definitely somebody. I was listening to a podcast of his yesterday talking about Nick Reiner. And in that podcast was it Alex Carolla or something? I don't remember. And he was doing the indoctrination stuff, right? He's like, it's a disease, and I was just like, it's kind of hard to stomach, I would hope that somebody who spends their entire career on a topic like addiction that's so important would be open to all of the paths and not be locked into one ideology. But unfortunately, I'd say most are locked into AA as good, safe, effective, and something that you should funnel people into, and are blind to the harms.
Yeah. And sometimes I've noticed too, when you say the harms, they automatically jump to like SA, like they can't even fathom, and like it does not compute that we're just talking about like the literature, the steps, like the actual program itself. We're not even like, yes, like SA is rampant in those rooms, but when we're talking about the harm of 12-step, that's not even what I'm talking about. And I think is very telling that that's where they go, because that's how much it happens. But then B, the fact that it's never crossed people's minds that this could be a harmful doctrine, is that itself is like alarming, It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the weirdest psychological part about it all for me, of signing myself up to be on the receiving end of daily, I guess, verbal abuse from 12-steppers is what it is. I'm not a victim in this. I'm choosing it by posting on the internet.
Right.
But it's there's this, they talk about that strange mental blank spot in the big book. There's this strange mental blank spot around like the cognitive dissonance that happens to keep the ideology in place, where it's like cannot hear what's happening outside of that. And I think it infiltrates the whole treatment industry, is that a lot of people are blind, and not even necessarily consciously, because I feel like there's no one to blame in a way. It's like, you can't wake people up who are asleep. You can't make people see something that they can't see. You can't crack brainwashing. You can just go on being yourself and speaking to people who can hear you, kind of a thing. But it's just a weird one. In my opinion, just like what you said earlier, Tara, the treatment industry is backwards. And anything other than harm reduction as approach, to me, is kind of violent and wrong. Abstinence could be a part of that, but it should be about harm reduction, period. And we have this false idea that abstinence is the goal, and everything then is around abstinence. And then it's just not like the reality of how that brain change is made.
Right.
Most of us, and remember, if I'm honest about it, okay, so I have not had a drink since I went to AA or rehab, but there were 10 years where I was drinking when I didn't want to, and I tried not to on my own, just like, I was never really serious, but I'm like, I won't drink for a month, and then I'd go like 3 weeks, and it was kind of like that. And then, so I never really quit, but I can never even like, so I think if I'm really honest about any goal in my life, I stumble forward until I achieve it. And part of that is rewiring the brain. Part of that's getting up enough momentum. Part of enough is getting sick and tired enough of the way things were in order to make that change. Because change is hard. Change is hard for the human brain. We don't all just want to jump into the unknown and change our lives. Even if we might want to, it's actually doing it. It can be difficult. So if I think about any change in my life, but even quitting smoking was like the same. I wasn't relapsing. I just started smoking again. I never thought about it as relapsing. I was a smoker or I wasn't a smoker, and it just kept flipping back and forth. I even had 5 years without smoking one time, and then I started smoking again. And now I can't imagine I'd ever smoke again. It's been since 2010, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But it took me several times, just like it does with anything that I try. It takes me several times to like get good at that new thing, whether that new thing is harm reduction or whether it's a goal I'm trying to achieve or a physical fitness thing or a business thing or whatever. It's never like,
Yeah.
without effort.
Literally, like you said, everything in life. I mean, even just trying to eat better. Sometimes you may be on this path of eating really well, and then you eat, a bunch of crap, and nobody tells you when you do something like that. No one's like, oh my God, like you just must not be taking your health seriously. People will say, oh, like stop beating yourself up, just pick yourself up and keep going. But when it comes to treatment, it's like you have to stop doing the thing that you're going to treatment to get help with, to stop doing the thing. You have to stop the behavior before you even get the treatment for the behavior that you're trying to stop doing. And then when it's not perfect, like nothing else is, like everything else is supposed to be in your life. Like everything else is, like you said, you kind of stumble forward. You're not perfect in everything. Nobody expects you to be. That is the one area that once you go and you say that you're done, you are never supposed to ever mess up again, right? And then think about how backwards again treatment is. It's like they'll say so many times how many people are going to come back, but you never learn any sort of harm reduction, any sort of safe using, anything to keep yourself safe. It's all about that apps. Like, yeah, the whole thing is, I mean, it's just it blows my mind. The more that I think about it, like the more I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, totally. And why the hell was an AA true believer working in my non-12-step rehab? Like literally that was an epiphany on this live stream. I'm like, that's like espionage, right?
She probably in her head was like, I'm going to make this treatment center well. Like, I'm going to help these people and show them the real way.
Totally.
I cannot do it.
Okay, we have, and quite coincidentally, I just learned from one of your videos in the past 24 hours, it all goes back to JAMA article that was co-opted all of those years ago. Yeah, so the Journal of the American Medical Association had an article in 1939, so a couple, like maybe 6 months after the big book came out, that said that AA is religious exhortation, it is religious conversion and propaganda, and that was there. And that the book, other than admitting that, or other than pointing out that alcohol addiction is a huge problem, there is no scientific value or merit in the book, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that caused quite a scene of comments. I'm literally quoting an article, and there's other articles that say other things. Lots of people did not like that, but it's what they said. In my opinion, my view, it 100% is religious conversion. So when people say it works if you work it, what really I interpret that to mean now is not the abstinence, although yes, okay, but what's working if you're working it, if you're doing the steps. What working would mean is that you've had the religious conversion experience, that you've surrendered to God, that you've turned your will and your life over, that you are now like outsourcing your agency to a higher power, a doorknob, a sponsor, a book, a group, a fellowship, whatever. And that is it working, is that you getting out of self. Self is like the demon, right? We have to get out of self. Self is the problem. We're self-centered to the extreme. It's so funny. My sponsor was like, you're self-centered to the extreme. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, here's where the book says, though we usually don't think so. See, you don't think so. I'm like, it's like these binds, right? No matter what you say, you're wrong. Remember the joke, right? Cult rule number 1 is it's not a cult. And cult rule number 2 is you're wrong. Whatever the question is, it's you. Right. You're the problem.
Wishing you both a happy, healthy Christmas from New Zealand. Thanks for all your amazing research and helping me figure this stuff out. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. So I think this is an important one to pick
Yeah.
up. Extra says listening to a stoner talk about sobriety. We are not talking about sobriety today here. We're
Right.
talking about rehab repeat customers. I, Kirsten, am sober. I haven't had a drink since 2009. That's my path. That's what I choose. And I'll kick it over to Tara to explain the path that you've chosen.
Sure. So I definitely am a stoner. I wear that, like, that is part of my identity for sure. And I think, it gives people hope, because for me, I tried to be 100% abstinent, and every time that I tried, I would end up with a needle back in my arm, right? For me, using substances is part of my life, but it's not, it's something that I enjoy and I do, but I don't think that it's one of those. I understand that we have been conditioned to believe that if you are X, then you can never partake in substances ever again. And I think a lot of people, when they use substances after they have had that chaotic relationship, we try to dress it up like, oh, it's a tool in my recovery, it's this or it's that, because we've demonized feeling good, right? We've demonized that once you had, especially if you've had a substance use disorder, or you've had an addiction, you are never supposed to be able to feel good again, or feel high, or this, that, and the other thing. And I think realistically, for a lot of people, that all or nothing attitude towards it takes them down a path that is a lot worse for them than smoking a little bit of weed. So I don't consider myself in recovery. I don't consider myself sober. I'm a person who uses drugs, and my substance is cannabis. And I think we need more conversations about it, because there's so much shame that comes with it. It's like, oh, like I use, like people are going to think that I'm still in active use, or this, that, and the other thing. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people use substances. Some people use a shit ton of caffeine. It's just the way that we look at it. Andrea says, agree, harm reduction.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fun things about our collab too, is that I happen to be, I don't like the word abstinent. I prefer sobriety. A lot of people prefer abstinent over sobriety. Abstinent sounds like I'm in a bright light hospital room with all the lights on and I'm like naked and it's cold or something. Abstinence, I don't know. I just, that word doesn't feel, I like the word sobriety. Like I just like it. So yeah, I'm sober. That's my deal. That's what I choose for myself. I like that but I think the right path is harm reduction. I don't think sobriety is the right path for everybody. I think that we got to choose for ourselves, and that, like when I really think about like when I started drinking alcohol, alcohol saved me. Alcohol saved my life is what it felt like. Alcohol is what got me through some really hard times, and that some of us, would you rather be alive and on something, or would you rather be dead? Like sometimes that is kind of what we're dealing with in our situation, right? And so where I stand now is on team harm reduction, and I don't know what that looks like for other people. For me, I got weird. Went really deep into my spirituality. I was like traveling around the world, living it, doing ashram weird shit. And like, I got to the point where I don't even use Advil or Tylenol or anything. So I'm like kind of on a weird end of, I was going to say a weird end of the spectrum, but it turns out I actually am autistic. So I'm on a different spectrum too. All the spectrums are happening over here. But the way that where I went with everything was getting really into my consciousness and exploring that. And so like, I learned that if I was going to have like once a month when I have very bad cramps, like right before, I menstruate, right? Like, I could take an Advil and it would take the Advil 30 minutes to kick in. That's usually what it was until the intense pain would go away. Well, I learned that with my mind, I can close my eyes and put my hands on my I guess my womb, on my belly, close my eyes and just breathe and just focus on relaxing and relax, like literally focus with my mind on relaxing all my muscles. And within 30 minutes, I could completely get rid of my cramps on my own through my consciousness. And so I got into this whole like mindfulness trip over medications. So I really don't use any medication. I mean, I drink coffee, but I don't use medications like really at all. And like the last time I had surgery, I took like one of the pills because they told me you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with pain. And so I did. I regretted that. I woke up in the middle of the night high on the pain pill and I hated it. And then I just took like 2 Advil the next day, and then I didn't take any meds. And I kind of like to be with my pain and transmute it with my consciousness. So I went a whole weird vibe, right? I just don't think that there's a right way. I found what works for me, especially because I was so deep into meditation for so long. I wanted to find out ways to change how I relate to my sensations with my consciousness. But that's not for everybody. It's kind of out there. Although I'd say it's more in here than anything else. Like, to me, it's very empowering and it's what I want. Also, pot gives me anxiety attacks and I don't like that. So everybody is different. Every body is different. Every mind is different. And abstinence isn't superior, period. Like, it's just not. There is no hierarchy on who's better than another person, or how to live a life is better than somebody else, is how I see it now. That's taken a lot of deprogramming, because AA taught me that your worth is related to your self-sacrifice and your sober time and all these other things, where abstinence is like the core of that. So I choose sobriety for myself now. That might change. I don't know. I also, when I did ayahuasca like 3 years ago in Peru in the Amazon, I didn't see that as like a relapse or anything having to do with my sobriety. I saw that as like a part of my healing journey. So I think what's important for me is like, or what I think is important in the deconstruction process, is that we decide what makes sense for ourselves. What do we want our life to be? Who are we? You know, part of life isn't about this purity culture, like giving everything up. Part of it is about joy and fun, and how do we want to be, and who are we, and honoring ourselves, and whatever that means. And I don't know what that means for anybody else, but I don't want to be judging somebody else through Bill's religion lens. Right. Because I never ever thought before I got indoctrinated into Bill's religion, coerced into Bill's religion, that using substances at all was bad, wrong, or that if you didn't use substances, you were superior. That was all the programming from Bill. I never thought that way. I mean, I grew up with stories. My parents literally went to Woodstock on their honeymoon. I grew up with some fucking crazy stories when I was a kid. I never once thought using substance was bad, wrong, or that you were superior if you didn't. I thought it was a normal exploration part of life. It was Bill that taught me. Bill's ideas taught me that abstinence was morally superior, and therefore you have status, credit. And I'll shut up.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, for me, honestly, cannabis isn't harm reduction for me personally. Was it at one point in my journey? Probably. But at this point in my life, like, I don't feel like it's part of my recovery, because I don't feel like I'm in recovery. I feel like I've healed. I've moved on from my chaotic relationship with substances. Now, I mean, I got into substances because I like substances. You know what I mean? Like, I like being high. I like smoking weed. And that is part of my life. And I do it because I enjoy it. And to learn to do it without the shame, without sugarcoating it and trying to make it into this thing that it's really not, so that other people won't judge me for it, or they'll be like, well, you know, I guess it's part of her recovery, whatever. Like I said, everyone has their journey. For some people, absolutely, cannabis is a huge part of their recovery and a tool in their recovery. But for me, as someone who does not consider themselves in recovery, cannabis is just a tool in my life that I use because I enjoy using it. And to like break free from all the shame to just say that out loud, it feels like we're not allowed to say that. Like, I like to use a substance because I like the way it makes me feel. But even though in the big book it says, you know, alcoholics drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, you know, but it's like, it's just to be okay with my relationship with substances and to be able to be honest about it is a lot more freeing than when I was trying to make it something that it wasn't, you know, for the acceptance of other people.
Yeah. And there's two separate things, right? There's whether or not AA is harmful and you're allowed to talk about it and you're allowed to deconstruct it out loud on the internet. And then whether or not you are like in the AA model's worthiness, you know what I mean? Like whether or not you fit AA's model of how you're supposed to be. So are you allowed to talk about AA is harmful if you're not sober? Of course. But there's this idea that you aren't even worth listening to if you're not if you're not meeting what AA says your worthiness is equated to, which is your sobriety time, your abstinence time, then you don't even get to have a voice about the harms in the system. What I get, and you get that. I don't get that because, bro, I haven't had a drink. Like, I'm good. But what I get is if you haven't created your own recovery path, you can't talk about it. A recovery path is problematic. And so that's the one that here's what it is. It like, they literally, the people who don't like that we talk about AA as harmful, essentially, they'll literally like shoot out like with like a machine gun, like a million different things. And then only a few of them are actually valid. Like they can't say to me, because you're drunk, you don't matter. It's like, well, I'm not drunk. So then they'll find out the one that, oh, because you haven't created an alternative recovery path, therefore what you're doing is wrong. I'm like, you can talk about the harm in a system without creating a new system. Could you imagine if you can never talk about a harm in a system unless you created a new system?
Right. Exactly. They do always say it. They're like, well, then what's your solution then? Or what are you selling? You know, there's always like, what is your solution? What are you selling? And then on the basis of me smoking, they'll be like, yeah, go smoke another joint. Or they'll say that as a way of saying, like, basically, I'm not listening to anything that you say because you partake in substances. Therefore, what you say doesn't matter.
And fair enough. Fair enough. If what they want is to listen to somebody who is abstinent, fair enough. Bounce.
Exactly.
But we don't have to conform to Bill's idea of what makes us worthy to be a human who can express themselves and speak their truth. Bill spoke his fucking truth and it was batshit bananas. Like, what do you mean? And if we don't fit Bill's model of what it means to be religiously like righteous or whatever in Bill's eyes, then we can't speak? No. I used to always say, why do I need to get my purpose from a man who died before I was born? You know, because Bill's been gone a long time. Like, I mean, it's just been so long.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have Andrea saying, I microdose cannabis small amounts as an antidepressant. I use kratom for pain and mood. Both are better than drinking for me. So it's a case of harm reduction. Yeah. I had somebody that I used to like be really close with in AA who, I don't think they go to AA anymore. They know I don't, and they know why I don't, but they started doing like, first, I think it was CBD, then THC, like gummies every night and stuff. And they just never talked about it in AA because they knew AA wouldn't get it, but it helped with their insomnia. It helped with their anxiety. There was all these reasons why they wanted to do it, and they felt okay doing it, but they knew it wouldn't be acceptable to talk about in the 12-step rooms. Right. So I don't know. There's no right way. We got to figure out what we want to do for ourselves. There's no like, we're not actually in this religion anymore. Bill's religion. We don't have to confess. Right. We don't have to repent. There's no atonement. Like, we're not sinning. I mean, if you choose religion, that's one thing. I'm not making fun of religion. I'm just like putting in the context of I was coerced into Bill's religion.
Right. King Mob said, weed is just a plant that can be abused. It's just that if you abuse it, it doesn't ruin yours and everyone else's life when you do. I'm 4 years off alcohol today. Weed saved my life. And I mean, I think that's like an important thing with any substance can be used to excess, or any substance can be, you know, however people want to say, misused, abused, whatever. But I think it's just how we look at the substances, right? Like anything can be harmful. I mean, people have even worked out to where people have drank too much water. I mean, literally anything, but because of the stigma with certain substances, I mean, literally there's been people who have died from drinking too much water, right? Very rare, but it's happened. But we would never look at that as, it's just the way that we look at drugs and the way that we've been conditioned to look at them. It makes it different, but we've made them special, but really they're just like anything else. I stopped using weed 9 months ago, though. I have nothing against it. It can be incredibly beneficial when working through trauma. Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. And that is the thing that we need to remember, that we just don't. Everybody's different. Everybody has different goals. What somebody's doing now may not be what they do a year from now. Like, you don't know what's best for somebody else, but for some reason there is just, well, I do know the reason. It's recovery culture that stems from 12-step. We think because we have struggled with the substance that we magically know what every other person who's ever struggled with the substance needs to do. Like, that is what recovery culture is, and it's fucking insane.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is I definitely have boundaries with other people's substance use, for sure. If somebody is at a certain level of their drinking, I will walk away. I will go in the other room. I will leave. I will move on because I don't mind if someone's had a drink or two or maybe even three, but once they get over a certain amount of drinks, I have no time for it. It's like this is just not working. Either the conversation's going nowhere, the person's repeating themselves or whatever. And so I have boundaries with other people's substance use, and I think we should. It's all about discernment. And if people don't want to listen to me because I'm sober or listen to you because you're smoking pot, then that's their choice, and I respect that.
Right.
But to be ourselves, you know what I mean? To be who we are and to not have to step into somebody's ideology in order to be accepted, to have belonging, to have connection, to have all of that. And it's so pervasive through society that we're supposed to be a certain way, or that because you've been to treatment centers, you should now behave a certain way or whatever. Or like, I know if I choose to drink again, I know that's a lot of people are going to look at me a different way. And I would never drink or not drink because of that. I would drink or not drink because of what I feel is right for me. And right now, not drinking is what's right for me. We've definitely like gone off on a tangent here, which could be a whole little show on its own. Sully says, I'm the opposite. I can drink, but I can't smoke weed, but I choose not to drink for other medical reasons. It's such a personal choice. I choose not to take Tylenol and Advil because, well, actually I had an injury, like I had a physical injury, and I took too much Advil and my stomach started hurting once. And ever since then, that was like in 2012, ever since then, I just don't really take it ever. And because of that, I learned how to, I just was like, I wonder if I can, I was learning how mindfulness. I wonder if I can learn how to relax my muscles so deeply that I don't need it. And it turned out I can. So I kind of vibe with that, but we all have our own thing,
Yeah. And when you come from a world that tells you your own thing is going to kill you, being that terminally unique, thinking that you're different, we're so used to not leading into it. And that is for me what I want to do. Like, I want to live me, just who I am, unapologetically. And even I'm just still figuring out who that is after years of being institutionalized in rehab for, basically 10 years of just a revolving door and given this identity. Well, now I'm learning who I am outside of that identity. And, I'm not apologizing for it.
Well, what do you think could have been different? I know we can't play this game, but let's just try to do Fantasyland anyways. If you go back and the first time you're in treatment, you're told that you can smoke pot, but you can't use heroin. Do you think things would have been different for you?
100%. Obviously, I can't say for 100%, but I definitely think I would have at least been out there a lot shorter, because for me, it was just like having nothing. Like, I am someone, people can say it's a bad thing, but I do like it helps me relax, and like my mind is always going 100 miles a minute, like it helps me just chill for a minute. And then sometimes, honestly, it does. If I'm deep in thought about something, people will say like, oh, like you smoke to numb yourself. And it's like, well, actually it's the opposite. If I'm thinking about something and I smoke, I can't stop thinking about it, it'll go around. But it's one of those things that I enjoy and I like it and it relaxes me and whatever. Damn, I just lost my train of thought. See, and then I hate that because I'm like, see, people are going to say that's because I smoke weed. Oh, no, I know what you're talking about with the rehab thing. So I think being able to have just a little bit of relief would have been enough for me. Because I really did get to a point where I was done. I didn't want to keep doing it, but I didn't know what else to do. And I kept trying it their way. But I really think that it would have made a big difference. I really, really do.
Yeah. So we have, regarding the rehab repeat customers, Kirsten Tara, what would you say is the number one thing you learned that helped you out? Great question.
That helped us out of the revolving door, or just to get sober? Is that what the question is? What would you say is one thing that helped you out regarding the rehab customer?
I think the most powerful thing that happened for me with rehab was connecting with other people who were like me, because I just remember what relief I felt. We'd all wake up really early for some reason, like before dawn, and we'd go outside and sit at a table and smoke cigarettes. And they would say things that I had never heard before. So the shame relief was like the number one helpful thing for me. And so having people connect, like, it was very healing to be able to be around like-minded people, because I felt a lot less shame. I didn't know anybody else who drank like me. And so, like, because I was drinking alone, I was drinking in the morning, and I just didn't know anybody who like went through the same kinds of things as me. I never talked about it. I hid it. Like, I didn't like hide alcohol in the house, but I didn't tell people what I was doing. You know what I mean? And so to be around like a small group of people who I could actually be honest with for the first time in my life, that was really helpful. I know that that's what a lot of people say they love about AA, but that can help. That can happen in safe environments. That can happen without having to believe outdated ideology or be converted into a religion or be coercively controlled, like that you have to believe all these things, like the disease, the death, all of that. So I think it really was connecting. The best thing I got out of rehab was realizing I wasn't the only one. It's going to make me cry that I wasn't alone in it, you know, that like
Yeah.
other people, that there wasn't something so bad and so wrong with me. It was like a hope, knowing that other people also struggled like I did, and like that there could be a way out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just being around other people was a positive, but I mean, the number one thing that I learned in rehab was, I mean, I guess there's the true thing or the untrue thing, right? Because the number one thing that I learned in rehab was that I had a lifelong disease. Like, that is the one thing that was drilled in my head over and over and over again. That is what I learned in rehab. But then something that I learned that was actually factually true, you know, looking back now, I really feel like there were just so many of us who were misdiagnosed with this permanent, you know, brain disease that just had other shit going on. You know, there was just so many people who we just got this label and we lived into this identity. Like, so many people, especially when you go like over and over again and just being around the same people and seeing the same type of people, it's just, looking back now, it's like, man, like, so many of us were just getting scammed on this identity and thinking that we were just these pieces of shit that couldn't stop doing drugs, you know, and like, what the hell's wrong with us? Why can't we stop? And this time I really mean it, you know, and you could tell who really meant it and who was really going to try. And it's like, no matter how many times I really meant it, trying that way never fucking worked for me. Even though, were there times I didn't give it my all? Absolutely. But when I did, it still didn't work. And then it just goes back to what you are. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I just kind of went off on a tangent there. But yeah, I'd say the number one thing that I learned, unfactual, was that I had a permanent disease, and factual was that so many people just get scammed.
Yeah. And then Kirsten, Tara, thanks for the response. The thought of feeling alone really hit me as well. Yeah. I think that brought up emotion for me, because I did feel so alone and isolated for so long. My roommate was my best friend at that time, and I didn't even tell her that I was on benzos, that I had anxiety disorders, that I was seeing a psychiatrist. My boyfriend didn't know that. Like, I just kept everything. I was so ashamed, and I was so convinced something was broken in my head, and I had so much anxiety constantly. And rehab, it was just like people were saying the same thing that I had been feeling. And I was just like, oh my God. And they were laughing about it. I know people say they get to AA and that's their experience. And I do think there's such value in that, of knowing that you're just a fucking human who's going through a hard time. A lot of us go through that too. It is really hard, yes, but you can get through it. You're not the only one here. You're not a garden variety anything. Like, yeah. And just being able to finally tell the truth and to hear the truth was the number one thing that I think helped me the most. 100%.
Yeah.
We have one more here. Let's see. Andrea says, I think it would have been helpful to have numerous options. The AA option only and the shame involved trapped me for a decade in the mindset. Totally.
Yes.
My wish for it all isn't even, I know a lot of people just wish AA would like blow up. And my wish really is for informed consent so that we understand that there's harm inherent in the treatment, just like we do with some surgeries. You might not make it out alive. We know that with some cancer treatments. We know in some treatments, we all know there could be a harm inherent in the treatment. There's chances that you might not make it out. There's chances that you might have other adverse effects. You know, even do I even say the word vaccine? We know that there's adverse effects. Like it's never sketchy to talk about the harms that people might get with a treatment, except for when it comes to recovery.
Yeah.
You can't talk about the harms associated with Alcoholics Anonymous. Like people won't let you. The experts won't even acknowledge it. They'll say that you're bashing AA if you want to talk about the harms. But literally every other medical thing, are we taking crazy pills, people? I mean, every other medical treatment, the known harms are talked about, advertised, published. Maybe there's sketchiness around it. I'm not saying everyone's totally transparent. Some obviously medical companies, pharmaceutical companies, whatever, there's been scandals, right? Lawsuits. But generally we know about harms with treatments. Every single, this is my analogy, every single cigarette I smoked, I know there was harm involved with it. It was informed consent. I was dumb. I was young, but like I already knew cigarettes were harmful before I had my first one. I wasn't smoking in the 1930s when they didn't know, or in the 1920s or whenever. So by the time I started smoking, it was already well known that cigarettes are associated with specific harms. And I chose to smoke anyways. And that's what I want for recovery treatment. I want people to choose a treatment that likely comes with harm, knowing that it's worth it. So if you really feel like the cult religion or 12-step is the only path, that you've tried everything else, you've tried naltrexone, you've tried this, you've tried that, and you're like, well, I guess I will finally try AA. I know it's harmful. I know I've listened to these dissenters. I get it. But I am actually like dying over here of like alcohol addiction and I need something. And then you go knowing what it is, and knowing that after you do the treatment and you get some stability, that then you need to deprogram from the programming. Fine, fair enough. Because I've had to do like, I've had surgery. And then, so I had surgery on my arm, right? I had surgery on my elbow and my arm. And I knew afterwards I was going to have to, my arm didn't bend all the way down. I had to do all these stretches and go to physical therapy. So I knew after my treatment, that the surgery, whatever, I would have to do this protocol afterwards to recover from the treatment, which is stretch my arm out. They've cut this thing out, whatever, right? Physical therapy. So if we just knew as a society that after you do 12-step and you want to leave, and they can't do this. They can't give this informed consent, because then it would be admitting that the ideology is a lie. But if there was informed consent, it could look like phase 2 is where you deprogram from the conditioning. You realize there's no disease. You realize that you can leave. There's no forevery, you know, but because of what the ideology is, there's all these comments here. They can't actually do that.
Yeah.
As Kate say, cancer patients get around to talk to each other in group without any 12-step program.
Yeah.
And Andrea says, the problem I have is that it's the exact opposite. It's not effective, but you are harmed further when you don't recover. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think that's the part that's hard, is that's for me. Like, I believe that the program should exist for the people that want it, but I do believe that people need to hear about the harmful side, about what it really is all about. Because yes, okay, maybe it works fabulous for you, Barbara, right? But it doesn't work fabulous for all of us. And not only does it not work for us, it harms us, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, it didn't work for me. It's that it kept me stuck in a cycle in believing that like there was something really wrong with me because I couldn't make it work. Like, the harm and just everything that went with that was more than just like, oh, the program didn't work for me. You know, like there's so much more to it that people don't even know about, right? Like that lady you were talking about, that doctor or whatever she doesn't even understand about this huge harmful side that exists. People just think like, oh, well, it doesn't work for everybody, but you know, it works for some people. So it's like, no, it's not just that it doesn't just work, like it's harmful. And then when you go below, you know, even beyond that, like then you find out what it really is, you know, that it is basically it's a religion, right? Like it's all of this stuff. And I mean, there's so much to it that people, it's not even on their radar.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thank you both for shining your light. Well, this has been such a rich conversation. If you are watching the replay, definitely let us know what came up for you in the comments below. Please let this be a spark of a conversation about anything we discussed, but also specifically about rehab repeat customers, the ineffectiveness of rehab so-called treatment centers, harm that can happen from the ideology, harm that can happen while you're in treatment, or any of the things that you talked about. Would love to hear what you think in the comments below. Yeah, it's been great to have you here. Been great to vibe with you. And I have one more comment. King Mob says, "Thank you both for all you do. It's really great way to wake up and get the day on Sundays. Hearing you both honest and share about what a lot of us have gone through." Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice to be able to, you know what? For me, honestly, it's so nice to be able to be fucking honest.
Yeah.
I silenced myself for 5 years after leaving AA and didn't say a fucking word because I was like being anonymous, didn't want to ruin it for the newcomer, like all of that. I was scared of what would come at me if I did, right? And it just feels so good to be able to just be myself and just say what I think and to hear what you think. That's why I love the comments so much, because I learned so much from you guys, and I learned so much Bernie from our conversations and stuff. And I just want to keep waking up and keep critical thinking, keep trusting myself. And that's all I want for you too. Definitely don't believe what I say. I don't always believe it months later, right? I'm always changing my mind.
Right.
But I love it that we're all on what I kind of see as like this critical thinking post group think, like awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
King Mob said AA is worse than the non-existent disease. I totally agree. Totally agree. Like I always say, recovering from 12-step from AA has been much harder than recovering from heroin, that's for sure.
Yeah, what a great mic drop moment to end on. Thank you so much, Tara. This has been fun. See everybody in the comments below. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, everybody.